It's Sarah here from Equestrian Movement, and I am coming to you live again for our second session of the Stronger Bond workshop. We've had a great session last night, and hopefully this started recording when I actually started speaking because it's telling me I'm about 5 seconds ahead. And I'm, yeah, okay. And it's giving me lots and lots of pop-ups, good old Facebook streaming. They've recently changed a few things on here, and it's a bit of fun. But so if it didn't start recording properly, this is the second session of the Stronger Bond workshop. And if you're joining me live, hopefully you are hearing me now and you are able to tell me that you're watching, that you have into the group correctly. Because as I said, Facebook has recently changed some settings here. There we go. There I am. Awesome. uh, And do let me know if I get a little bit crackly or anything like that. We are experiencing a couple of little rainstorms, which aren't really big, but sometimes my internet goes a little bit skew if during those particular times. Hey, Tanya, thank you for joining. It's great to see you here. And I will be talking a little bit about your question that you asked earlier this week today as well, if you don't mind. So tonight's session of the Strong Bond workshop, we are again expecting to go for about an hour. And if you missed last night's session, it is in the feed of the Stronger Bond community. But just shout out and let us know if you want any extra support in terms of tagging you in any videos you can't quite find. Hey, Robin, good evening. Isn't it morning over where you are right now? Um, uh, so let us know if you do need any help finding any of the videos or the action item for last night. We saw some great comments on last night's, both on the video and on the action item. And make sure you are commenting because that puts you in the draw to get one of our 2 giveaway mini courses of opening communication, which is a really great starting buffer for our horses that may be trying to express something and we're not quite getting it, or we know that our horse is saying, we're not sure what our horse is saying, we need them to talk to us in a slightly calmer voice, in essence. So it's a really great session. Hey, Charlie, over in Cape Town, it's lunchtime over there. Thank you for joining us. So tonight, when Katie's going to join us in the comments when she finishes up with the school, so feel free to ask those questions. You can personal message either Katie or myself if you're uncomfortable talking in the group or asking your questions in the group. You can also email us. We welcome all of those communications, and they will put you in the entry into one of our into the entry to win one of our opening communication mini course giveaways, which we will be drawing tomorrow night. So make sure you are participating, commenting, and catching up. By participating live, you also have the ability to influence some of the content that we give out for you. Some of it we will answer immediately. Some of it we might hold over for another session, like, for example, tomorrow night's session. Others we might actually, if it's a really in-depth one, we are chatting about possibly hosting another Q&A probably around about Monday next week, because we do have the long weekend coming up this weekend. And yeah, but we'll let you know as soon as we have confirmed that. Katie and I just haven't really had a chance to 100% lock in a time or 100% lock it in as yet, whether or not it's there. Hey, hi Kelly, hi Katie. So let us know where you're coming in from, that you can hear me just fine. I know there's a few of you guys who are popping in, and just a quick reminder about these Stronger Bond sessions. We did our first live session last night, and it's definitely well worth listening because we spoke about some of the behaviors our horses are showing and why we might be starting to feel some of that conflict or friction, that kind of innate grating feeling where we don't think things are going quite as well as they could be, or we're worried that maybe we're doing something wrong, or our horse is worried that we're doing something wrong and they're not being heard. So last night we spoke more specifically about the horse and the behavior that the horses express. and why they might be expressing some of those behaviors. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit more about us and what we bring into that environment that can sometimes create this conflict, which prohibits us from actually really becoming this powerfully connected equestrian team where we sort of work together in a single unit with the ultimate goal of keeping each other safe and happy. And that's what we really want, right? Like we've come to horses because we love the animal. There's something magical about these horses, like these animals, that allow us to do so much and work with us so well, that make us really want to delve a lot deeper into that. They also become for a lot of us, they become the safe space. And do let me know if you think this is you agree that they're a bit of a safe space for you, where you can kind of just be a bit more of yourself and be a bit more relaxed. And they, particularly for those of you who are lucky enough to grow up around horses, you probably found that they were you know, going out into their space gave you that opportunity to really, I guess, develop and let go some of those emotions. So they can become quite an emotionally healing animal for us just to be in their presence. I know a lot of the times I just like hanging out there because there's just this calming essence. I think as soon as I smell, hay and horse poo and all of that, it's just kind of like, I'm in my safe place. I'm good. I'm happy. And even though in that safe place, we can still have worry and concern and all of that, even fear and anxiety, we still feel this level of connection knowing that we want to be here. And it just comes up to us to develop our skills as handlers and riders, to be able to understand those horses so that we can make it an even safer place, so that we can reduce the worry and your worries and fears that might be associated with working together on both our sides, on both the horse's side and our own side. So there is a lot that we do have to do. So, yeah, as I said yesterday, poo picky is better than therapy. Yep, definitely. As I said yesterday, we spoke more um, about the horse and the conflict, the horse that is expressing conflict. Tonight, we're going to talk more about ourselves and where we bring that conflict into the connection. And tomorrow night's session, we're really going to talk about how we can overcome both of those and become that powerfully connected team. So tomorrow night's session is a really amazing session to work through, with lots of tips and tricks on, understanding I guess, exactly what we need to have this, I guess, pure essence of unicorn moments, as we do fondly like to say. Do remember there is your workbooks. So I do have my workbook all pre-filled with all of my notes and answers. This gives us guidance, but feel free at any stage to ask any questions that you might be, you might have. Pop them into the feed, and if we can answer them live, I definitely will. And remember that tomorrow night's session will technically be the last session, although as I mentioned earlier, Katie and I are currently talking about possibly running a Q&A session, so that we can keep tomorrow night's session to around about an hour. Because we've had some really great questions that have come through, questions and comments that have come through, that we want to probably delve a little bit deeper into, just to give a little bit more insight into what might be happening as a great example. So as soon as Katie and I have confirmed the date and time for that in our diaries, we will share that event with you inside this group. We'll also post it in the emails as well. So on to tonight's session, which is all about the concern. Hey, Pam, thanks for joining us. Alrighty, so our very first question is really about some of the feelings that we may be experiencing ourselves that identify that there's conflict in our equestrian team. These will stem from either valid reasons, like our horses are showing behaviors that we aren't sure how to handle, or perhaps they are potentially dangerous situations. But sometimes they can be very muchly internal, and they can be driven by our own, I guess, mental place, which can be influenced purely by everyday life. And recently I had fairly recently, I've actually had my own experience of conflict again. I had been saying to Katie for a while, I've been working with Gunnar for a good 2 or so years, maybe about two, maybe 3 years, maybe. Well, anyway, for a fairly lengthy of time, and I was feeling really confident. And even Katie had commented that a lot of our sessions where we were working together, it wasn't really much about educating me. It was just finding things that we could level up on together because Gunnar was at a stage developmentally that we were going to be working on for a fair while. I was at a stage in my own writing development where I had reached that competency to actually know and understand what I was writing and what I was doing and how to scale up and scale down and feel when things weren't quite right to ask for that assistance and we put the extra challenge in. Now, one thing I did realize that I totally forgot to do last night was to introduce myself actually. So, a quick heads up. I'm a relatively new comer to the equestrian world. So, as it sounds really, really strange, here I am up here on the live giving you these talks. I've been a vet tech and a vet nurse for a very, very long time, and I've worked with animals for an extremely long time. But my interactions with horses is relatively new, as in that I only started working with horses really about 7 years ago. And I've been really lucky in the fact that I've had a number of horses that I've had the opportunity to work with, from a little grey Arab mare that I first fell in love with and was my heart horse to start with, to a emotionally traumatized elderly gelding who, once I started using some of the techniques working with Katie, I started to see how very much these techniques and the methodology, the holistic horse handling methodology that Katie teaches is so important and how it influences and how it works with different horses and how we don't just use the one single tool on every single horse. We listen to what the horse needs and we adjust our approach. But we have an expansive toolkit available to us to try, test, and come back to it. And it's okay to make mistakes while we do those things. It's just about how we come back on, how we come out on the other side. So for you guys who don't realize or haven't had much of a chance to get to know me, I am really, really new, essentially, compared to a lot of other people who've probably been doing it for all of their life. I've only been working with horses for 7 years. But the great thing is I've been working with a lot of green horses and a lot of horses that have had some form of developmental issue, whether it's mental, emotional, or physical, and I've had to help them overcome these. And the other thing about coming into this as an adult writer is that I, of course, have come with my own predisposed injuries, including a back injury that, at one stage was so sensitive that I sneezed and put myself on crutches for 3 weeks, which is hilarious. And yes, you may laugh that I did put myself on crutches for 3 weeks just because I sneezed. But that was the time when I realized that, 3 weeks of not work playing with horses, I realized that I really, really, really like horses. And I don't want to go out of 3 weeks with not working with horses again. So I've done a lot of work to fix myself, to put myself in a position where I'm less likely to do those types of injuries. And also, I also want to create horses that are less likely to do something that will, you know, potentially risk that injury. So I want to work with horses that want to look after me, and I will train with that methodology in mind. That is my goal. When I'm riding, I want a horse that wants to look after me, and I want to look after that horse just as much. And of course, that just means the negative side of that is you often fall in love with the horses. So there's been a number of horses I've been in love with. There's been a number of heartbreaks over the last few years. But that's just the I think the big negative that it comes to when we work with these beautiful, majestic beasts is that unfortunately they don't live for as long as we do, and they're not exactly known for making best life decisions themselves. So they can sometimes put themselves in a risky situation or in a situation where they get hurt, and it's for them it's better to let them go than to keep holding on. Um, but going back to the recent experience with Gunnar, so I've been working with Katie as my riding instructor and a training instructor for quite a number of years now, about 5 or 6 years. And I've been working with Gunnar for a fair amount of time, and both of our skills had reached a place where we were plateauing, waiting on some developmental skills. So we decided to up the ante by putting an emotional challenge on Gunnar. And it was a bit of a strategic challenge on me as well, in that majority of my writing has been solo. So we decided to put us into groups. Even Gunnar hadn't really been in any group sessions prior to that. And he is a younger horse and he has a tendency to eat other horses, apparently. So I spent a good I remember that first lesson. I pretty much spent the entire time asking him to listen to me and not to try to eat the other pony's bums, because we don't do this whole follow the leader thing. We work around each other, exactly as if you went to, for example, a competition and you're in the warm-up arena. You have to work and navigate around each other in a way, and you have to keep your horse's head in the game and make sure that they're feeling comfortable in those situations and not about to fall apart and have a big hissy fit. So we started to up level and upskill in that, and a couple of things kind of happened at once. There's a physical issue where we weren't doing enough canter work, so his shoulders started pinching and he couldn't quite know what to do with his body. And we also introduced a new horse into the group lessons, which he really didn't like. So he had a complete little meltdown and nearly bucked me off into the letter B, which at the time I laughed my head off. But then it repeated a few times in consecutive lessons. So we decided to take him out of the session. And of course, even though I didn't realize it, internally I started wondering what I've been doing wrong for him to start bucking. Am I reinforcing the bucking issue? Am I missing something? And Katie and I had had a number of discussions around the whole idea of what is missing in his training. But I decided that the level up that I'm going to do is to go and work by myself, totally unsupervised, just work around on this and make sure that he's emotionally stable, so that we can rule out the emotional issue, or the emotional aspect of this particular issue, and just focus on the physical aspect, and that I guess that gap in development that we hadn't worked on quite enough. Unfortunately, I probably shouldn't have tried that level up on myself at that particular time. And what I ended up doing was getting really worried that I was doing everything wrong. That worry was translating to Gunnar. He was getting more tense and frustrated through the ride. I was feeling all of that and beginning to wonder if he was just going to face plant me somewhere into a pole or a ditch or the side of the, into the arena somewhere, and probably possibly even trample me just to just to show how it goes. Um, the and so of course I lost a lot of my confidence in that. But there was also a lot of external things in my life that was happening that was causing a lot of frustration. Well, not even so much frustration, but putting a shake on my own general confidence itself. For example, I totally changed jobs and went into a brand spanking new career and a new role and a new business. And so I was feeling a bit out of sorts there. I was feeling frustration in my own living arrangements, because we'd spent a good 12 months prior to that looking for a new house to buy, and it just wasn't working because the Queensland market was ridiculous. So I was getting really frustrated in that as well. And without really knowing it, those internal factors were feeding a lot of the anxiety and worry that I was having. And essentially, it all came down to the big clincher that I just wasn't good enough. Um, so I was feeling a huge amount of worry. And I think this is where the conflict started to happen between Gunnar and I. And I even got to the point where I was starting to seriously consider whether I wanted to continue playing with horses or not. And it wasn't until one day I went, right, you know what? I'm just going to pull Katie back into the arena and I'm just going to say, something's not right. Give me a hand. Just be my eyes on the ground for a minute and tell me, is it me? And lo and behold, it was me. And so once I had a bit of a cry in the saddle, I then had a bit of a rethink. But we'll talk about that rethink in a moment. Um, so let's talk more about the answers to our first question. And Robin, around Gunno being stable, he is actually turned out he doesn't actually have other horses in his paddock, although he has access to them in neighbouring paddocks. But when he first came to the farm or first came to the school, he actually tried to chase and eat the other ponies. And apparently, it was quite funny when he went to his like to their school vacation farm, where they just get turned out and allowed, to be horses for a good solid month plus. Take a break from schooling. He apparently spent the first, I don't know, couple of weeks, and Katie, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but a good amount of time just chasing after all of the other school horses. And of course, because he's a big guy, he's a draft horse, he's a slow plotter to start with. Him chasing them meant that they were able to hightail it to the far corner of the paddock, stand there for probably a good 5 minutes eating while he finally caught up, and then they'd bolt to the other end and he'd turn around and chase them. And they'd be happily eating for 5 minutes again and then run off. And so it was probably a bit hilarious, but he has gotten a lot better with a lot of the horses, and part of that's also age as well. When he first came to the school, he was only about 7 or so years old, and as a draft horse, that can be a bit baby brained. In that, prior to that, I have no knowledge of how he was worked or handled or anything like that. But back to these questions. So, some of the feelings you maybe experience that creates conflict in your equestrian team. So, very first one is anxiety or worry, and this is what I was experiencing. And this anxiety worry is more about: Am I doing things right? Is this going well? Am I good enough? That's the kind of general feeling that you be getting when you have that anxiety or worry. Number two is around annoyance and frustration, where there's a particular goal we have in mind, and it just seems to be that we just cannot get there. So we tend to, I guess, get a little bit frustrated, whether it's in ourselves or actually at the horse. Both can happen. I know that a lot of, particularly our draft horses, are prone to be handled by people who get more frustrated with them because they are slower thinkers and they are body confident. So they're not afraid of using their bodies to, get around things or walk over the top of you or anything like that. And often the time it's not because they're doing it maliciously, it's because they're not really keeping up with what you're doing. They haven't really caught on to it. I've even had a chat with one of the colleagues at the school who also rides Gunner, and said, you have to remember he's not a thoroughbred. He takes like a good 3 strides to understand what you've asked him, let alone implement it. So, there is some of that. So I know that a lot of our draft horses have a tendency to be handled with a little bit more of annoyance and frustration, purely because they just have that tendency to work in a slow away. On the reverse side, the horses that get really hyperactive and silly and spooky, a lot of people can get frustrated and roll their eyes and go, "Oh my god, not again! It's just a balloon. It's just a goanna. It's just a puddle of water. It's just a leaf on the tree." Purely because we, are frustrated by being constantly exposed to these behaviours, and we don't know how to handle them, or we don't know why it won't stop. The third on the list is fear. And I do know that that's something that we do feel. And fear is a valid thing. Fear can be driven because of actual activity that is validated. We have actually hurt ourselves or we are in potential danger. We have to remember that our horses are, a good 10 times plus, or 5 to 10 times plus heavier than us in most cases. So, they can cause a lot of damage, even unintentionally. And so fear is valid. And fear can also come from perceived things where we don't really know what is going on, but we think we know what's going on and it should be fearful, so we're going to fear it. And then the final one, number four, is confusion, or perhaps a lack of understanding. And this differs to anxiety and worry, and more anxiety and worry sort of plays on, am I good enough? Am I doing the right thing? Whereas confusion is more, am I'm not sure if I'm implementing this right. I'm trying this new thing and I'm not sure if it's working the way that it should be, or um, I know there's these particular skill sets that are supposed to apply. Do I have them? Or I'm not even sure why I should be doing these types of things, or what I should be doing next. So I've just found out a pretty cool new feature on Facebook Lives, which is a polling aspect. So let's see if this comes up. Hopefully you guys can see it. Uh, I want to see if it's it. It's hopefully you are seeing a poll right now, which is which of those four elements do you feel the most? So I'd love you guys to tell me. Just pop in your answers in there. Showing the results in video. Yeah, maybe this will be it. Show results in the video. Hopefully this will show up on the video too. So we've got some people that have indicated they're feeling a bit of worry and anxiety, some that they're feeling a little bit of that annoyance and frustration, some that are feeling some fear. Yeah, we all feel these things. Like, this is the big important thing that I wanted to show you guys in these polls. It's not, you're not alone in these feelings. And sometimes we are surrounded by people who seem significantly more confident than us. Sometimes we are told to do certain things and we don't know why we should be doing those particular things or what the goal of that particular thing to do, which can create some level of confusion in that in itself. So those are your four elements that start to, like, what we feel, what we've identified, that when we're feeling those are the feelings that we have that drive conflict in our connection. And regardless of whether that conflict um, started as a result of a behavior that the horse has shown, or has started as a oh, excellent, Charlie, you can see it, very beautiful. I know that people could post the results, which was great, so that was a really cool function. But sometimes those behaviors will be valid because they those feelings that we have are valid because they've resulted as a direct action from our horse, and um, sometimes they occur as a less of a direct reaction to our actual horse, and we've brought them into a situation because of our life itself, and that makes it no less valid. But it does mean that it's something we have to be mindful of, that we're going to have to try and manage in one way or another. And we'll talk about some really cool tips on that in a moment. Now, this is actually Tanya. Tanya, where I wanted to talk about your particular question that you asked about babying trigger, because it was a really great one. And I think this is you feeling a little bit of anxiety or worry, wondering if you're doing the right thing. And the anxiety and worry is not coming from the results that you've seen in your horse, but the mentality or comments of, I guess, you know, traditional trainers in that, you felt like you were being softer and calmer, but this is what the horse needed. And I know that, Tanya, you've spent a lot of time working through the program in there, and I know Katie gave you some great advice there too, which was, how would you handle your other horse? You'd handle your other horse quite differently to how you'd handle trigger in that particular situation. But that anxiety and worry can start to plague us if we allow it to. And it's actually, I think this is why we really love the community support that we have, here in the Stronger Bond community, but also in the community we have for our students that are undergoing the holistic horse handling methodology, is it's just a way of being able to, um, I guess, check in with each other and go, look, am I being ridiculous, or am I, you guys agree with me, or is there something I'm missing, that kind of thing. And it's a nice, safe place to ensure that we're doing the right things for our horses in our horses' particular ways that they need it, instead of following a traditional pathway and a single tool method, or um, like using join up, or using desensitization, or using um, I guess even the good old bushy braking techniques, or pushing them through it, pushover methods. Just get them past it. They'll learn. um, we don't take those actions with every single horse, because every single horse reacts differently. And for some horses that need it, they probably aren't going to react very, very well to it. And the horses that don't need it tend to do okay, but they don't need it. We don't need to take these harsher single tool uses, single tool um, options with them, because they actually don't need that sort of support. So be aware that your feelings are valid, but understand where those feelings are coming from. If it's a horse's behavior, how can you support your horse to help them through it, so that you feel less of that anxiety or worry or annoyance or fear or confusion? if it's internal or if it's a skill building thing you need to do, how are you going to step up? How are you going to change your thought processes? How are you going to stop external influences from interfering with your connection with your horse? And it's not always easy. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm a psychologist in any way, shape, or form. I know that there are some points in our lives where we it it just goes to crap. I think I had one particular year where I had so many family members that passed away, including pets and horse. And then, tragic things like finding out your mother-in-law has cancer and your father has a stroke and has to go in a nursing home. And now, lo and behold, you're now a full-time carer. That those are shit years, and they can really drain us mentally. So, it's just finding how we can, I guess, develop a safe place when we are with our horses, so that some of those issues don't really impact our connection, as particularly as we're building our connection. The deeper our connection goes, the more forgiving our horses are of us, and the more forgiving of our horses we are as well. So if you think of those situations, if you've ever had a heart horse, and a lot of the behaviors that some people find annoying, frightening, or scary, they in the heart horse, you actually go, oh, it's just a quirky personality, and I love it so. And you are a lot more forgiving of those particular behaviors. So the deeper your connection with your horse goes, the more you're forgiving of those particular behaviors, which may occur sporadically, but the deeper your horse feels connected to you, the more forgiving they are of your own anxiety, and the less likely they are to have those behaviors as well, particularly if we have opened up pathways of of communication, so that they can tell us before they show those really big behaviors. So I hope some of the little hashing out that we did for you, Tanya, has helped you, um, I guess, reaffirm that it's 100% a-okay to give your horse exactly what your horse needs at that particular time. In that, and that also, I want to give you a massive, like a massive clap out or shout out for being an advocate for your horse in that particular moment, because you know other people that had a vet that turned around and said, "Oh, is he unhandled?" and is quite rough, probably wouldn't have jumped up and said, "No, he is handled. He's just sensitive." They would have gone, "Oh, he's a little bit flighty," and that might not have made the vet a bit more aware of the handling techniques he needed to change. So you were a real advocate for Trigger in that particular moment, and you gave Trigger exactly what he needed to get through an emotionally difficult and painful period, where he had someone he didn't know handling him, where he was in pain. So it was perfectly a-okay, and I don't think you were babying him in any way, shape, or form. So, um, oh, 10. Absolutely. These disorders that we can have as well, like say mental health issues, or that can definitely play into our total lives. I think if we're getting the right type of support, we can usually use a lot of the skills we learn to actually help our horse as well, which is really amazing. So I love that you love the groups. Now let's lead into our second question, which is the three most common mistakes we will end up making that damage our connection with our horse. And this is we either miscommunicate with them, and that could be that we misunderstand what they're communicating, or we don't provide the right guidance for them. Typically, we show up inconsistently, or our lack of confidence as well. So, talking a bit more about that miscommunication, it's really like it can go to like communication is a two-way street, and our horse is always talking to us. The issue is our horse doesn't talk English, so they. Oop, sorry. Oh, my screensaver just went on. to do forgive me. Our horses don't speak English, and they do learn words associated to that, um, that we speak with them, and that's usually it's a form of cue training almost, like they understand certain particular words because we repeat it when we do a particular habit. But they don't talk, they don't speak our language, and we don't speak their language. So it's really important for us to understand their body language. They're actually much better at reading our body language than we are at reading theirs. And they're really great at picking up facial expressions. So Katie herself will actually tell you that she had a lot of issues with her horse Fiddy when she go down to the paddock when she's just in work brain, and she gets what we call RBF when she's in work brain. And if anybody wants to know, you can what RBF is. If anybody doesn't know what RBF is, if you you can definitely ask us, and we'll have a little giggle over it. But she gets what we call RBF on when she's in her work mode. And Fiddy would pick up on that facial expression and that body language that she was passing out and go, you ain't coming into my yard with that attitude. Go back, come back with love. and so she actually had to work a lot on her own body language and her expression, and what she was thinking, just to even be able to work with Fiddy successfully. So it's what we are doing, what we are thinking communicates very well with our horses, and they will pick it up and go, come back later. I ain't dealing with you in that mood. And at the same time, they'll be giving us very subtle languages sometimes as well to say, I'm really worried. I'm really worried. This is going to hurt. I think this is going to hurt, or I'm not really sure what I need to do. And when we miss them, that will escalate into bigger behaviors. And that's when we get the big extreme behaviors like horses that shut down, horses that become aggressive, horses that just become totally ignorant, or horses that just escalate into that high level of spooky shyness as well. But if you guys had a look on our website, we do have a personality quiz. It's a free quiz you guys can do. It's a little bit tongue in cheek as well. There's a couple of comments in there, such as a leopard, crocodile, I forget what it is that chases, jumps out from behind a tree. But it's the experience that we have with horses in general, and what their reaction has a tendency to be. There are 4 personality quadrants in there. We don't say that one horse fits into a single quadrant perfectly. Sometimes they cross over on a number, and sometimes as they develop, will actually either unmask their true personality, or as they age and mature, we'll start to see them become more rounded, and you'll get them closer to this, I guess, this perfect state of psychological safety, which we'll talk a lot more about tomorrow, which is the ultimate goal that we have inside our entire methodology, the holistic horse handling methodology. It's what Katie teaches at the riding school. It's what our students that are in a part of our online programs are working through. And it's something that just changes the way we approach our horses. It increases our skill sets, but it also changes the way our horses react and respond to us. And I think that's the big thing that really makes a huge difference. So communication is a big issue. Consistency. Now, and I'm glad you've actually just posted this, Charlie. I've just seen your response here. In terms of consistency, you can only get to work your horse twice a week. So you worry you're not doing enough. I'm going to be brutally honest to you. I haven't seen Gunnar for 4 weeks. And I very cheekily went out there just after the end of work, maybe just slightly before the end of work, and to have a little ride, and to get my saddle fitted to him. And we just had a blast. So consistency doesn't mean that you turn up at the same time, every single day. And it doesn't mean that you have to work the horse 7 days a week, or even 5 days a week, or even 3 days a week. Consistency is consistency in how you show up and what your expectations in terms of your boundaries are. So a lot of people that are inconsistent with their horse are inconsistent, particularly with what we call boundaries. And I think boundaries can sometimes be a bit of a confronting word. So maybe think of it in the holistic horse handling program. We actually call it no offense boundaries. It's like we've got a bubble that we want you to respect. These are the expectations we want you to expect, because we need you to respect those boundaries, to not hurt us accidentally by pretending we're a horse and doing what you would do with another horse. But at the same time, we're also going to let you put in some levels of boundaries as well. So we're going to allow you to have your own level of boundaries to give us guidance on what you feel comfortable with, and we'll tell you what we feel comfortable with. We're going to and when we don't have that consistency in those boundaries, if we don't have that consistency in our expectations, so one day we expect our horses to stand away when we feed them, but then the next day we're in a rush because we're racing out to work and we throw the hay over the fence and let our horses pound us the minute that we get into the paddock, and harass us for the food. Like that's inconsistency that I'm talking about. Is we don't have that expectation, that level of expectation, consistent in our approach. And that consistency also comes to how we work with our horse in terms of how we, I guess, approach them from an emotional connection base. So if our first goal is first and foremost, first, do no harm. Secondly, it's always around connection. And then finally, it's about what our hopes and goals happen to be. Then we always have this expectation of how we're going to work together. First of all, we're always going to make sure that we work with you without any pain, confusion, or fear. Then we're going to make sure that we work in a way that is going to reaffirm our connection. And then we're going to work on challenging and growing ourselves. That's what I mean about consistency. So hopefully that was not too much of a ramble, but it's definitely one that we find Katie and I have identified as one of the biggest mistakes we do make. That just, I guess, don't let our horses fully understand what and how they need to work with us to be the animals that the partners that we need in our connected equestrian team. And then lack of confidence. And that lack of confidence is not just a lack of confidence in ourselves, it's also a lack of confidence in our horse and our horse's lack of confidence in us as well. So when we don't work on building confidence together, we see these big gaps. And that's where I've definitely found utilizing the methodology around the holistic horse handling method is gold because it sets us up for small achievable wins that hit repeatedly, which then makes working with us enjoyable and partnerships enjoyable. And then when we come to the next challenge, we know that we've got these small foundations that we can build on top of that make it easier for our horse to understand or action the next challenge, which gives us another win, which builds up another dopamine and euphoric moment for both of us. And before you know it, we actually have this level of confidence because we're like, hey, you know what? I know that I can work this way with my horse. So talk about if I go back to the situation I've been mentioned around Gunner, which was fairly recent. And when I say fairly recent, I do actually mean this year. We, you know, his behavior started to escalate because he was starting to lose confidence in me, and he's still a very young green horse at this stage. He's learnt quite a lot, but he's a green horse, and he's still a fairly young, just mature. Like his brain is just turning into the starting to mature. And so as soon as I lost confidence in him, he lost confidence in me, and that's where his behavior started to escalate. And then that fed my lack of confidence in myself and him, and it just kept getting worse. So there is, the thing that I did was literally to go back to those foundations and um, remember that there are a lot of things. Like we have come a long way, Gunnar and I. We went from a horse that used to fight their riders to a horse that actually has a willing, active, working trot that has a rein back that is probably better than some Olympic horses' rein backs because we found the way to motivate him to work, to want to work, to put in some of his best gold star efforts. And and I actually think of him as a big goofball and a fluffy big fluffy Labrador because he's such a cuddly pony. 17.2 hand on 950 kilo pony, but still a cuddly horse. So by thinking back to where we'd gone and going back to the foundations that I knew we could both have a win on, and then only doing one teeny tiny ramp up, it for me, it got to the stage where I was like, I'd lost so much confidence in myself. I was like, you know what? The goal I have today is to get on and ride. That's my only goal, is to get on and ride and have, just be relaxed in a ride. We just walked around the arena for maybe 10 minutes, finished up and went, you know what? Yep, that was great. The next goal was to go, right, we're going to have a little bit of a ride, going to make sure it's nice and relaxed. And if we're all feeling relaxed, we're going to have one walk, trot, transition. That's it. And, these are skills that we already both know that we have. And it's just because we both lost confidence in each other that we'd started to see some of those behaviors happening, outside of that developmental bucking. And that just led to me wondering whether or not I wanted to work with horses altogether. But now I'm back at this stage where I'm like, I guess what, we did this. And I even texted Katie today because I taught Gunner how to give me kisses. So just us being able to fool around and have fun together while he was getting his saddle fitted, and then we had a ride after, during and after the saddle fitting, and he was just like gold. We both had fun. We both enjoyed it. This is far cry from where we were only about 6 weeks ago. So that is where that lack of confidence does impact us. And that's the three most common mistakes that drive conflict in our connection. I can almost say, if you guys think about the moments you're having conflict, you can probably identify one, if not more, of those mistakes as the underlying reason that the conflict's occurring. And then you'll understand that the conflict's occurring because of, your conflicts is showing up because you're feeling these particular feelings and your horse is expressing these particular behaviors. So there's some really big learnings you can get from this. And the next step is really to understand how to get to it. And I would 100% say that showing up as a compassionate leader is one of them. Understanding how to use communication as one of the tools in your toolbox is number two. And then building confidence in each other and understanding how to have skills that layer upon each, oh, excuse me, little hiccup there, that layer on top of each other. So you can create small wins that build confidence in each other and then build up on those small wins to make it to deliver to the next challenge, to deliver to the next challenge. So for a lot of us, sometimes we might find ourselves going all the way back to the beginning. And that can happen. Say, for example, in Tanya's case, she's gone all the way back to the beginning of just providing emotional support for her horse because the horse was in pain. So it could happen because our horses had an injury. In Trigger's case, I think it was like our extreme wet weather that we've had in the eastern coast of Australia, creating sore feet and abscesses. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tanya. But it can happen from pain. It can happen because they've had some level of trauma, emotional or physical trauma in their life previous to us that we don't know. And that's always the unfortunate thing with horses, is we don't always know their full history. We kind of have to work around what they're telling us. But building our confidence, building our together by creating small wins, small challenges, and then building their confidence in themselves and their confidence in us builds our confidence in them. And it's just this structure that sort of builds on top of each other. So that's a little bit about our common mistakes. Now, tomorrow night's session, we'll actually go through the tips we have, like pretty much just insight into the holistic horse handling methodology, which is targeted at creating this powerfully connected team where our horses and ourselves, like where we as a team with our horse have faith, trust, and confidence in one another. And we've developed this psychological safety where our horse feels okay about expressing itself and its needs with us without having to escalate into large behaviors. And we feel okay about addressing those needs without feeling like we have to resort to power over methods um, or feel bad for stepping back to some foundation skills because our horse is asking for those, where we become true advocates for what our horse is asking for us. That's the entire goal of being that powerfully connected equestrian team. And that works regardless of whether the horse is your own or if you're leasing a horse, or I know in Charlie's case, you are working with some rescue horses. So these skills will translate to all of them. The level of connection will depend, I guess, on the amount of time that you get to spend with them overall, not the number of times you visit them, but the amount of time that you get to spend and the quality of the time that you get to spend with them. Because I know in some rescue cases, you may only have horses for maybe a month before they're moved along to their new home. So we can spend some time, but some of those other horses, particularly those that have experienced significant trauma, they're going to need a little bit more time, and they're going to need to rely on us a lot more to help them come through it as well. All right. Now, one of the other common things that happen and that sort of build, I guess, that indicate that we have lack of confidence in ourselves, perhaps we're feeling a bit confused, or perhaps we're feeling a bit more frightened, annoyed, or frustrated with our horses. Um, One of the common things I hear is, my horse needs a better person than me. My horse needs a better rider than me. My horse needs to go to a trainer. And in some cases, that may be right. There are times when either the skill sets that we have just aren't going to meet what our horse needs right this second. And there are times when the horse that we have to work with at the time just doesn't sit with our personality. Do have a tendency to be fewer and far between, but they do happen in there. But it's, I guess, what I wanted to talk about is, in this case, is when we're using trainers, we can't rely on our trainers to develop that connection with our horse. We can send a horse off to a trainer. The trainer can put in buttons, and then the horse comes back, and you end up with the same level of behaviors that you used to have, simply because the horse, the trainer may not have necessarily uncovered the underlying reason. They've just put in some new buttons for you to press. And let's face it, if you wanted to press buttons, we'd be riding motorbikes instead of horses, really, right? So, and I'm not saying not to use trainers by all means. I'm saying, if you need that extra support, or you need someone with a bit more skill set, definitely get them to come in and to support you. But what we need to recognize is that trainers offer cue training. They create these buttons for our horses, whereas from our perspective, there is not a single one among you that don't know your horse better than you know someone that's more experienced. You have this level of connection and recognition, and you might not fully understand it just yet. Maybe you haven't had as much experience as a trainer, but you know that horse better than anybody else. And this is why you offer connection. Like, you can offer connection to this horse. You can build this level of trust, faith, and confidence in each other that allows your horse to feel and be heard. So trainers offer cue training. You offer your horse connection. Without connection, you cannot be a compassionate leader. And it's so important for us to be these compassionate leaders. As I mentioned, that no offense boundaries actually comes under the heading of compassionate leadership, where we say, we respect you, we love you, we actually have some great feelings for you, but this is my bubble and this is my expectations. Please don't cross that, and I'll do the same for you. It's actually part of a healthy relationship to understand each other's boundaries. We would see it in any human interactions as well. So make sure without that connection, you can't be a compassionate leader. You can't stand up for your horse and be an advocate for your horse. Without compassionate leadership, you cannot have psychological safety. So these are the blanks that I'm filling in right now on the second last question, or the last question before the bonus tip. So trainers offer cue training. You will offer your horse connection. Without connection, you cannot be a compassionate leader. Without compassionate leadership, you cannot develop a psychological safety. And without that psychological safety, you can't be that powerfully connected equestrian team. There's always going to be something that creates some level of conflict in your interactions, whether it's everyday life, whether it's bad weather that creates abscesses, whether it's an accident that was of no intention but happened, whether it's someone else that's come in and traumatized the horse in some way, shape, or form, whether it's a change in herd dynamics. There's always something in our world that's going to be able to create some level of conflict with our horses. The important thing we have is we develop that level of connection that we have with our horse, show up as that consistent, compassionate leader, and ensure that we develop that psychological safety so we build on this connected equestrian team. And when we do that, these little parts of conflict become less and less of a problem. It's not to say that we don't have to go backwards to some of our foundations. It's not to say that sometimes we don't have to get a trainer in. And by all means, 100%, if you need that additional support, look for a trainer that can work with you and be an advocate for your horse with you. But remember that you're going to have to put in that level of work because it's you that's going to drive that connection. Katie, um, I brought Katie in to meet Natalia because I was having some problems. So Natalia was the grey little Arab mare that I first had when I started riding. And a friend was kind enough to lease her to me, and I was totally naive, like really, really naive, like kind of hand over eyes, shudder and wonder why I haven't died, kind of naive when it came to horse handling and horse riding. And so I definitely needed a trainer to support me so that I could educate myself, develop skills, and level up to be the person that my horse needs. And that's where Katie came in. She was a huge support and advocate of that. She taught a lot of skills that I didn't even realize I was learning. And it was only until I went, once Natalia passed away and I started working with a traumatized elderly gelding that had some very large herd bound issues. He didn't really trust humans. He'd never really had a chance to be listened to or loved by humans, even though he hadn't necessarily been like abused. He just didn't have any connection with people. He didn't know how to connect or talk to people. And we started working together on that. And once I started seeing the methodology that Katie used, I went, yep, this is the pathway I need to. And the big moment for me was when I'd harassed Katie into partnering with me to create Equestrian Movement, to create her methodology as an online program for students. And she was writing out all of her lesson plans and her understanding of training and some of the sciences behind the training that she knows. Because Katie also has some background in natural therapies as well, as a naturopath, not in natural therapies, as a naturopath. So she knows a lot about hormones and all those kinds of things and understands how they influence our bodies and our horses' bodies and how we can use those dopamine, for example, those dopamine hits to create, you know, affection and willingness even throughout our working together. And so I was practicing some of the lessons that she'd put down. And he was this horse that was really closed off from people and didn't trust people and really herd bound. And then I came into a situation where we finished up our riding session for the day and everything was all chill and everything. And a friend of mine and I, we decided to go um, behind the arena to a small paddock where we had a little picnic table set up and we were having some lunch, just enjoying being around horses and outdoors and that kind of thing. And Custard followed us in, and that's unusual for him to start with. But then, of course, the gorgeous Percheron Reacher also followed us in because we had food. And he was like, "Hey, friends, you got food?" But of course, poor Custard was now blocked. So one, his access to his the mare he was herd bound to was blocked. Two, he was absolutely terrified of Reacher. Not that Reacher had a mean bone in his body, but Custard was terrified of him. And he was suddenly trapped in this paddock in this small yard with no way to escape. And he was having a tizzy fit. And I stood up. I gave him a little fist bump, which is my check-in tool. Said, "Hey, you good?" And he kind of went, "Oh my God," breathed. And then I said, "Hey, you ready to come with me? Do you trust me enough to take you out?" And he's like, "Yeah, okay, I'll follow you." So he followed me at liberty, past the big scary Percheron that might eat him, out into the bigger paddock again, towards where his mare was. And he turned around, looked at me, just gave out this huge big sigh of relaxation, and then went, "Okay, I'm going to my mare now." And that was the exact moment that I realized that this methodology works, and it works on all horses because we can tailor it to every individual horse's needs. It's about setting you up with the skill sets that you need to be able to become the person that you need to be for your horse, that your horse needs. And that's my bonus tip for tonight. I want you guys to sit down and think about this. Actually, I want you to write this as your new mantra. Write it on your mirrors, put it on the dashboard of your car, maybe safe somewhere safely so you're not always looking at it or interfering with any speed odometers or anything like that. Put it where you easily see it. Put it up on the barn wall. Your new mantra is, I am the right person for my horse. I want you to think that, because the moment you start thinking those, your whole psychological aspect starts to change around your horse. That anxiety, worry, annoyance, fear, frustration, and confusion starts to lessen. I'm not saying that it completely goes away, but it starts to lessen because you're now thinking, I am the right person for my horse. What else do I need to be? What do I need to do to support my horse? What skills do I need to build up? Do I need to look into other avenues like pain, or fear? What fear are they feeling, and how can I help them through this fear? How can I help them through this pain? How can I help them learn to learn? All of those. So your bonus tip tonight is, I am the right person for my horse. Stick it up in your barn, put it on your mirrors, have it wherever you can see it. Use it as the backing for your phone case, for your phone on your phone screen. So every time you look at it, you actually see that. So I do hope that you guys have had a great session tonight. We have just hit the hour mark again. Oh, look at me. I'm almost pretty much on time. Woohoo. So I want you guys tonight, as tonight's action item, to think about which one you identify most in yourself that's causing that conflict. What's the most common mistake you might be using? And tell us in that post that I'm going to put up at the end of this. We'll be back tomorrow night for our final session. Katie has told me that hopefully, crossing all fingers, she should be on time finishing lessons at the school. So she should be able to jump in even if I kickstart tomorrow night's session, which will be great because you'll get to ask her all the tricky questions. Katie is our head coach at the Equestrian Movement, whereas I am her support trainer and also the person who does a lot of the IT stuff. If you do have a lot of the times where there's bigger behaviors, particularly more dangerous behaviors, I'll actually refer to Katie because she has a lot more experience in that with around about, oh, I'm not even going to say a number, Katie, because I'm having a mental blank, but a lot more years of experience than I have, working with a number of different personalities. And speaking of personalities, if you go to the website at equestrianmovement.com, at the top of the screen, there's a pink banner which talks about the personality quiz. If you haven't done it already, do jump on and do it and let us know what personality you came out with and if you think it actually resonated with what you're experiencing right now with your horses as well, because it's great to have that little bit of insight, and it'll give you some cute little intels about the most important things that that personality needs when it comes to overall management and interactions and the support that we need to give them as a human as well. So back tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which is Brisbane time in and yes, and that'll be Thursday night. And we'll also be drawing the competition at the end of, the winners of the open communication um, course at the end of that session. So it's been such a great night. I've really enjoyed talking to you guys. I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to it and feel more comforted that even people that are working as trainers still go through these particular situations ourselves. So, we are here to support you in any way possible. And hopefully, you've been able to identify some of the things you might be doing, experiencing, or feeling, and starting to have those aha moments that help you move forward. Have a great night. Bye.